So now let's cut to Nat Rich, who's a personal responsibility coach, to find out why setting boundaries are the key to a healthier mind in 2021.
Hey guys, I hope you're well. It's me, Nat Rich, and I am here this January to help you identify and set your boundaries. So I was asked by the team to basically put together a talk for you that would help you in some way regarding mental health. And one of the biggest things that's ever helped me in my entire life was learning that I had no boundaries, and that was pretty much the reason for everything that was annoying me in my life. So learning about boundaries, I thought would be great to start you off for the new year. Now, I'm not here to patronize you. Some of you may know about boundaries. Some of you may have perfect boundaries. And if so, no problems. You can listen to this or you can go and get on with a life with amazing boundaries. And I wish you well. For those of you who don't know what boundaries are and have no idea how to set them, you might want to keep listening. So one of the biggest things for me in my life was learning about the fact that I had no boundaries. Now, you might be thinking, what are boundaries? What is she talking about? How does that even work? Well, there's many types of boundaries. I'm going to go a little slide here for you just to give you an idea of the boundaries that I'm talking about. Now, it may be because you don't understand what boundaries are and why you need them. So there are many kinds. There's emotional boundaries where someone's pushing you emotionally. You'll have all had that kind of challenge before. That can be a friend or family member, or it could be a partner. There's physical boundaries where somebody may be abusing you in some way, which is definitely not okay. None of these are okay, but that's definitely something that we need to be setting up boundaries for. There's also sexual and relationship boundaries, what you stand for in a relationship and what you don't. There's also spiritual boundaries, which we'll go into as well, and mental boundaries. So there may be other types of boundaries that you can think of, but for now, I wanted to look at these ones. And now I wanted to basically say to you, there's a couple of things first and foremost, which will come back to the screen here. I'm getting used to using the screen as well as the slides now. It's very interesting. I'm learning all sorts of new things. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the reasoning why you need boundaries. So boundaries are not hard walls. They can be if they're set incorrectly, but boundaries are what we need in order to be able to govern ourselves in our life. Now, if we allow people to abuse us and we allow that, is it their fault or is it ours? Or is it a mutual responsibility? Because most people think if they have boundaries, they wouldn't get anything done, or people wouldn't like them, or they wouldn't have friends, or they wouldn't be able to get a partner. And that's actually the opposite. When you're clear and you can set your boundaries of what you want and what you don't want to experience in your life, you can then have a life with clear boundaries and people will live by your boundaries. And if they don't for any reason, you can let them go. And it's that simple. But this was never taught to us at school. No one ever did a boundary class at my school when I was growing up. And I'm pretty certain that nobody else is teaching it at the moment. But I loved learning about this because it allowed me to take full responsibility of my life. And what I mean by that is, regardless of what happened in my life, I knew I had a role to play as well as the other person. And if I worked on my part, then that way, at least I knew I'd done whatever I could, and the rest was down to them. But without taking action and responsibility for your boundaries, without putting these into place, it's very, very difficult for us to live an easier life because we can come up with all sorts of problems. So there might be a boundary, for example, just something that's popped into my head. You may have a friend, okay, and your friend is amazing and you love going out with them when we could go out, but you love going out with them. But one of the things that they do is they never turn up on time. And you get ready and you're all excited and you're waiting for them at the pub or at the train station or whatever it is, and they're continuously late. Now, if you don't say anything to that friend about being late and it starts to frustrate you, that will build up with you a lot more than what you think. And it will start to repeat with you. And one day you may just scream at them or not want to hang around with them or completely not want to know them. Just because you didn't share early on how this made you feel, it's now become from a small problem, it's become a massive problem. And you can lose a great friendship over a very small boundary if you don't care or you don't share how you really feel, if you don't care about putting that boundary in place early on, you can lose some of the greatest friends. And I have experienced this myself. I've lost many people in my life by my inability to be able to set correct boundaries, and also by being pushed by other people's boundaries. And that for me didn't work. I needed it to change. So that's just one example of a boundary. You may have another boundary where you are in a relationship, for example, and your partner is saying, yeah, I'm totally committed to you. I want to be with you. This is it. This is us. Off we go into the fairy tale land of the future. But they're texting someone else. And you've said, I don't appreciate you texting this person. I don't appreciate the flirtation going on. It doesn't sit right with me. But if you don't put a boundary up, this will continue. And because they don't think that it's bothering you that much, or they might just think they can get away with it, they'll keep doing it. And if you don't speak up and put your boundary in place about what you want or don't want to experience, then they're not the ones at fault. That would be our fault for not setting the boundary in the first place. And again, I've been there. I've got that t-shirt too. And this is one of the things that it's really about sharing this information and reminding you that you're a human being. You have emotions. They aren't always easy to go into, but when we can get clear on them and we can really start sharing our truth, that's when things can change for us. So I've done another little slide here, which I love. This is probably my favorite one. And this is about the types of boundaries that we can set. But first of all, we need to be very truthful with ourselves, and we need to see where we are right now and why our boundaries aren't in place. So I'm going to bring this slide up. Now, I know there's a little live thing in the corner on the other side, but I'm going to explain them to you anyway. So the actual yellow slide says 0 boundaries. Now, when you've got 0 boundaries, which is where I started out, this means your boundaries cross over with other people's. You'll feel like a victim or that you're being manipulated in some way. And if you have 0 boundaries, many people can walk all over you. It's not a very comfortable place to be in. And this is usually where, like I said, most people start from, or feel like they're living. They could be, your boundaries could be pushed by your partner, pushed by your kids, by your colleagues. If you have 0 boundaries, you will feel like a victim. The next stage is hard boundaries. Now, these are unnecessary imaginary walls and blocks that we put up to keep people out, thinking that we're keeping ourselves safe, but actually we're keeping ourselves barricaded in fear. And these are not healthy. They become a major problem for us. They become resentful. We can get angry. We can get defensive, but we think we're protecting ourselves. But what we're doing is causing ourselves another storm of problems that just don't need to be there. Now, you think that other people won't hurt you if you've got hard boundaries, but what you'll find is whatever, we resist in life persists. So those scenarios where you put up hard boundaries, they will keep coming back to you because they actually want to be broken down and they need to flow. Now we're going to go on to the next one, which is messy boundaries. Now, messy boundaries are a mix of both hard and 0 boundaries in different areas of your life. So, for example, you might have one boundary for one friend and another one, a 0 for one friend, and then you might have a hard boundary for another. And neither of them are working for you. And those two people are confused. They don't know why you've got 2 different boundaries. And it's hard for you to remember all of the different types of boundaries for the different types of friends. So these are the things that cause confusion and frustration to both yourself and to other people. Now, where we do want to go is in the pink, which is my favorite color. Most people will tell you it's pink and yellow. It's all over my branding. And pink just makes me feel warm. So I've put pink in here because these types of boundaries are the most effective. Now, this is brilliant boundaries where you understand the benefits and boundaries that you can have and you set them correctly. You confirm with yourself what's true for yourself, and then you communicate them with other people in a fair way. And it's easy for all of those involved to understand why the boundaries are in place and that they can follow them. People know that they can that they can't exploit you if you've got brilliant boundaries. Now, I'll come back to the screen here, and hello again. And what I want to say is brilliant boundaries are just that. They're not easy to set. They're not easy to define, but they are worth your time. Now, you may be thinking, right, this sounds like a really good thing. Where are the boundaries in my life? I've got a challenge for you, okay? What I want you to do is find a quiet space, whether it's at home. If you don't have any space at home because you've got the kids there and family or whatever it's going on, maybe try and sit in a car or go somewhere that you can find some space on your own, whether it's a park. Make sure you take a piece of paper and a pen with you. Now, one of the things here is, yes, we're looking at boundaries, but behind boundaries is your absolute truth. Welcome to the truth. The truth is uncomfortable. It's not what everybody wants to hear or see or feel, but it's your greatest friend. If you can become comfortable with the truth, if you can become willing to face your own fears and your own truths, then you can unlock a whole other world of magical wisdom. Without that ability, it's very hard to be able to set anything in your life if you are not willing to be truthful. So you've got to be really honest about who in your life is causing you a problem and why. So on the pen and paper, I'd like you to basically not try and put them in columns, but I'd like you just to allow your mind to flow. So you close your eyes, allow your mind to flow, and you ask yourself the question, where do I need to work on with boundaries? Or, what are the boundaries in my life? Or where are, those areas that I truly need to go into? However you word it, your mind will bring you an answer. So straight away, a friend or a situation or a loved one might come to your mind. Your mind is your friend as well as your foe, and it basically is there to help you. It will chuck something at you and tell you what you need to work on. So write that name down or that situation. And what I want you to do is I want you to say to yourself, okay, this is the situation. I recognize it for what it is. Now, what's the issue? Why haven't I got boundaries? What is the real problem of this situation? Don't be scared of what's going to come out of the pen, by the way, when you write this down. Just allow it to flow, because the truth of how you really feel about this will flow and you can get to the core of your problem. You may never have shared this truth with yourself. You may feel, oh my God, I can't say this because what if I hurt someone? But if you actually do this and you put it together properly and you write it down, you get to the core of the problem. And I know it's tricky, but it's definitely worthwhile. So once you've asked yourself, the core of the problem, and you've looked at that, I want you to do this for every single area in your life. You need to find out the name or the location or whatever the situation is, find out the truth of why that's there. And then once you've done all of that, you'll have a solid list of where you can start working. And where you can start working is a really clear space of homework, basically. This is your self-work. This is how you're going to come to build on what you really want to experience rather than what you don't want to experience. So I'm going to have to plug this in. This is brilliant, isn't it? With the whole Zoom thing. Give me 1 second. There we go. See, if I'd have prepared properly, there you go, that wouldn't have happened. But here we are. Back again. So excuse the realness. This is just a fact of life. Not everything is perfect, and it's the way it is. But let's go back to your boundaries. Now, your boundaries, as I said, are extremely important to be truthful with. Now, they're going to feel uncomfortable in some way. They're going to feel like, oh my God, I don't want to go into this. This is really awkward. It's really embarrassing. How can I share this? Okay. And what you then need to do, once you've been truthful with yourself, you've defined where your boundaries are or where they're being pushed, you then need to get really clear, okay? And be honest with yourself. You need to learn how to communicate. Now, you can't shout at someone and say, right, this is it. I need this. This is the way. I figured it out. I've sat in the car. I've figured out my boundaries, and you're pushing them, because that's not going to work. No one's going to want to listen to that. You also can't say, oh, would it be okay if, I'm really thinking about this boundary and, I don't really know what to say to you, because that also somebody's not going to take you seriously, especially if you set it and then you don't uphold that boundary and you keep it in place. People will just push all over them, because what's going to happen for you is that you're going to basically create and set your boundary, and you're going to learn how to communicate that boundary, because you have to do it with love. You have to come from the right space. But then the universe is going to challenge you. So if you've set a boundary with your partner and you've said, right, okay, I don't want to experience this. It's a hard no for me, but I don't want to be horrible about it. So I'm going to effectively communicate, but I definitely don't want to experience this again. Okay. So you set your boundary. Now, if This is a good boundary. It will stay in place and no one will rock the boat. But if you need to be challenged on it, you will get challenged. The universe or God or source or whatever you want to call it will bring you the ideal scenario for you to test that boundary. Now, that boundary in itself will come in the form of a challenge. And that challenge will be slightly tricky for you. It will be difficult in some way. And it will require you to effectively communicate your boundary once again. And once you've done that and you're able to do it a second time and you keep it in place, the chances are you don't really need to deal with that boundary again. But if you waver and if you don't keep that boundary in place and you, oh, okay, and then, you let them off once again and they do the same thing again and again, you haven't set your boundary. Now, is that their fault or is that yours? I'll let you choose that answer, because this is what it's about, is your truth, your boundaries, your effective communication, and your ability to stay disciplined to what you truly want to experience. It's your dedication to yourself. And this is how you form self-love. Self-love is not looking in the mirror and saying, hey, I look great today. Self-love is actually performing acts of discipline that serve you and your future self. You're loving yourself today because you know in the future that's going to benefit you. If you don't love yourself today, you're going to do something that's not going to benefit you in the future. Whether it's an extra piece of cake that you know you shouldn't be eating, which is something I usually do, or whether it's something where you go, oh, I'll just leave it for another day. That's going to affect your future because you're not going to get what you truly want. If you really do love yourself, you'll correct yourself in the moment that you're in, here and now, and you will be disciplined and you'll be able to keep that boundary. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, all sounds well and good. How do I learn to communicate? Okay, there's a few simple steps. First of all, close your eyes and relax. When you've figured out your boundary, you need to sit with that. You need to feel that boundary. You need to make sure you're comfortable with why that boundary is there, what it means, what you've had to go through, what the past of that boundary is, why it's been set. You need to be sure and comfortable before you even begin to communicate this to someone else. You need to know for sure within yourself what this is about. So one, make sure you're thoroughly communicating with yourself first. We can always communicate better with other people when we've done it with ourselves first. Two, make sure when you set this boundary, you are not angry, stressed, exhausted, fed up. You need to be in a space where you're calm, cool, collected, and in a great place, because you want to deliver this boundary with love. You want to deliver this from somewhere in yourself that's really happy, where you're just like, oh, okay, I can do this. I'm feeling good today and it's going to be a success. If you go, oh my God, this is boundary, I don't know how to set it, I don't know what to do with it, they're going to go mad. What you're trying to say is never going to come out of you in a good way if you're coming from that anxious space. Okay, so make sure that you are very calm, chilled. It's probably going to be at a time when it's completely unrelated to the boundary being pushed. This could be on another day entirely when you're walking around. This could be when you're just on a phone call with a friend. Because imagine you can either say, hey, I don't like you doing this anymore, you need to stop. Or, hey, the other day when you called me after 10 o'clock and I asked you not to, I don't want to fall out with you. I love you, but would you mind not calling me after 10? Because I really need to get my sleep. And, I'm done at that time of night. I don't want to ignore you, but, I just can't deal with anything else at the moment. I'm dealing with myself. Which one's going to go down? Is it the, hey, go away? Or is it the, hi, this is where I'm at. I just need to communicate. Are you okay with that? It's a much different approach. You also need to make sure not only is it the right time for yourself to communicate that boundary, you need to make sure it's the right time for them. Don't try and set a boundary for someone when they're angry, when they're annoyed, when they're pushed, or when they're tired, because they're not going to want to know. They've got other stuff going on right now. So make sure that they're calm too. Make sure it's where you're both in a chilled space, and say to them, hey, either introduce it very calmly or say, hey, I want to talk to you about something that I've been working on myself with. Is now a good time? When you ask someone if it's a good time, wait for them to say yes, then continue. If it's not, don't. And if they say, what is it about? Tell them. Then you can actually go into the conversation. Some people don't like hearing anything that they don't know what it's about, but do your best. Okay, all you're doing is trying to get used to yourself, your new idea, deliver it effectively. So make sure you're delivering it from the same space to the same space, which it's coming from, which is calm, cool, and efficient. Okay, you don't have to be over apologizing. This is you just setting out the rules and principles for your life. So that is all we've got time for. I truly hope that you have enjoyed today's talk. If you're interested in hearing any more from me, you can email me if you want, or visit my website. It's www.where'snatat.com. Also, if you are up for it and you fancy listening to my Talkward radio show, which is the Talkwards, which is awkward talks about things that matter, every single night of January 2021, we have the Talkward show, and we'll be live from our radio station. You can check that out at iamsoundacademy.com. So I hope you've had an amazing start to the year, and this is going to help you in some way. I'm not on social media, so you can't follow me there, but you can reach out on either of those websites, and I will hopefully see you all one day soon. Bye for now.
There is an easier way to get booked onto more podcasts as a guest. Join matchmaker.fm for free today and start making connections with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you.